On August 18, 1590, a ship's captain waded ashore on a small island off North Carolina, his granddaughter's third birthday. He expected to find her and around 100 English colonists waiting. Instead, nothing. No people, no bodies, no sign of struggle. Just abandoned houses, dismantled board by board, and a single word carved into a wooden post, Croatoan. 115 men, women, and children, including a newborn girl, had vanished. Over 400 years later, no one has ever proven what happened to them. This is the story of the Roanoke Colony and the mystery that swallowed it whole. The story starts 5 years earlier, in July 1585, when Sir Walter Raleigh sent roughly 100 soldiers to Roanoke Island under Sir Richard Grenville and Governor Ralph Lane. This wasn't meant to be a farming settlement. It was a military outpost, a forward base for English ships to raid Spanish treasure fleets in the Caribbean. Lane's men were soldiers, not farmers, and they depended almost entirely on trade with the local Croatoan people for food. For a while, that relationship held. The Croatoan leader Granganimio kept peace with the English, but Granganimio died, and everything after that started to fall apart. Granganimio's brother, Wingina, took power and renamed himself Pemasapan. Where his brother had cooperated with the English, Pemasapan grew suspicious of them, and with good reason. The colonists were consuming food the Croatoan needed for themselves, and tensions escalated toward open conflict. Convinced that Pemasapan was plotting an attack, Ralph Lane struck first. On June 1, 1586, English soldiers launched a preemptive raid on the Croatoan village and killed Pemasapan. It was a brutal, decisive move, and it left the colony's survival entirely dependent on English supply ships that were nowhere in sight. 1 week later, on June 8, 1586, an enormous fleet appeared on the horizon, nearly 30 ships under the English privateer Sir Francis Drake, fresh from raiding Spanish ports in the Caribbean. Lane starving, war-weary colonists begged for evacuation, and Drake agreed. Within days, the entire 1585 settlement was abandoned, its soldiers carried back to England. The first attempt at an English colony in the New World had lasted less than a year. Raleigh wasn't finished. He was already planning a second attempt, this time with families. In 1587, a new expedition set sail, this one civilian, meant to build a permanent English settlement on the Chesapeake Bay, far from the site of the earlier violence. It was led by John White, an artist and veteran of the first voyage, now appointed governor. But the fleet's pilot, Simon Fernandez, refused to sail any farther than Roanoke Island. Whether from stubbornness, orders, or a desire to get back to privateering season, Fernandez forced White and 115 to 117 men, women and children to disembark at the very spot the first colony had failed, a place already known to be dangerous. On August 18, 1587, just weeks after landing, a leaner dare, John White's daughter, gave birth to a baby girl. They named her Virginia. She was the first English child ever born in the Americas. 6 days later, she was baptized, the second person on this soil ever christened into the Church of England, after a Native American man named Manteo. For a moment, amid the fear and uncertainty, there was hope. A new life, a new beginning, an English future taking root on Roanoke Island. That hope didn't last. The colony was desperately short on supplies, and 9 days after his granddaughter's birth, John White reluctantly boarded a ship back to England. He promised to return within 3 months with food, tools, and reinforcements. He left behind his daughter, his son-in-law, his infant granddaughter, and everyone else who had sailed with him. White had no way of knowing that 3 months would become 3 years. England was gearing up for war. In 1588, the Spanish Armada sailed to invade English shores, and Queen Elizabeth ordered every seaworthy vessel, including the ships promised to Roanoke, requisitioned for national defense. Private voyages were banned outright. White tried repeatedly to return. Twice he managed to get a ship, and twice those attempts failed. For 3 agonizing years, the fate of Roanoke's colonists was completely out of his hands, while the Anglo-Spanish War raged across the Atlantic. Finally, on August 18, 1590, Virginia Dare's third birthday, to the exact day John White's ship reached Roanoke Island, what he found was not a massacre. It was a mystery. The settlement's houses had been carefully dismantled, not burned or destroyed. A new defensive wall of sharpened logs now surrounded the site, and carved into a tree were the letters CRO carved into the fort's gatepost in plain capital letters was a single word, Croatoan. Before he left, White had told the colonists that if they were forced to leave, they should carve a cross above any message, a distress signal. There was no cross. Whatever had happened, White chose to believe it wasn't an attack. Croatoan meant something specific, a barrier island to the south, now known as Hatteras Island, home to a native tribe friendly to the English and closely tied to their interpreter, Manteo. White wanted to sail there immediately, but a hurricane tore through the fleet, damaged his ships, and forced them off course. His crew refused to risk the voyage any further. John White sailed back to England without ever setting foot on Croatoan Island, and he never mounted another search. He would never see his family again. So what actually happened? Modern tree-ring science offers one clue. 1587 to 1589 was the driest three-year stretch in the region in 800 years. A catastrophic drought that would have devastated crops and strained relations with every native community nearby. Historians have proposed several outcomes: that the colonists starved or were killed in conflict, that they tried to sail home and were lost at sea, that they scattered inland to join Algonquian communities near the Chesapeake or the Chowan River, or, the theory gaining the most traction today, that they walked to Croatoan Island and simply became part of the tribe that lived there. That last theory has physical backing. Since 1998, the Croatoan Archaeological Project has been digging on Hatteras Island, and what they've pulled from the soil is striking. A 16th-century rapier hilt, English gun hardware, a fragment of a slate writing tablet, and signet rings, all buried in the same layers as Native American pottery and arrowheads. In 2025, researchers announced a new find: piles of hammered iron flakes, waste consistent with English-style metalworking happening right alongside the Croatoan tribe. A separate site 50 miles inland has produced similar evidence, suggesting the colonists may have split into more than one group. Not every archaeologist is convinced. Some call the assimilation theory storytelling dressed up as evidence, but the artifacts keep turning up. For decades, one piece of evidence made the mystery even murkier. In 1937, a man named Louis Hammond brought a 21-pound inscribed stone to Emory University, claiming it was carved by Eleanor Dare herself, telling of death and desperation after White's departure. Scholars were captivated, until 47 more stones surfaced, all traced back to a Georgia stonecutter named Bill Eberhart. A 1941 Saturday Evening Post investigation exposed them as forgeries, and the reputations of the academics who'd endorsed them never recovered. The original Hammond stone's authenticity, strangely, has never been fully resolved either way. No skeleton, no grave, no confirmed trace of Eleanor Dare, Ananias Dare, or baby Virginia has ever been found. Every theory, starvation, slaughter, assimilation, a doomed voyage home, remains just that, a theory. What we do know is this: on one August afternoon in 1590, an entire English colony vanished so completely and so deliberately that the only word they left behind might not have been a cry for help at all. It might have been an answer. We just don't know how to read it yet.